Of all the incredible battles that Mongoose Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana have had down the years, I have never ever seen this in 15 years of them playing each other. But it just happened for the first time in the Clutch Chess Champion Showdown in St. Louis, USA, a truly phenomenal tournament. Gukesh and Hikaru also playing, but today we're looking at two Fabi Magnus games, bloodshed in both. What an exceptional fight this was, and Fabi opens us up with the King Prawn. Best by test, Magnus keeps it solid here by fighting immediately for the centre, no Sicilian, and we get a Roy Lopez. Not an Italian, not a centre game or a Scotch or whatever. We see knight f6, and what is this? A Berlin. Now Magnus, I said that weird, sorry, because I was about to say Berlin endgame, because we get the Berlin endgame. This is how the line proceeds here, and the queens leave the board. Now you don't have to play like this, right, but it's what happens in this game. A couple of Magnus fans actually start bleating at this point. He's the GOAT of the endgame, loves to grind hard like a grandma. But can he get it done against Fabi, who's in scintillating form in 2025, though has been struggling day one of this tournament. Now, if an immediate g4, knight drops here, black's okay. So instead, we see the knight simply develop. You could play bishop e7, then if g4, knight h4, you know, different ways to go. But Magnus shuts down on the move. Bishop f4 played, bishop e7, and it's one of those moments in chess where the player with the black pieces just has to say, stack my bishop first of all, because that's what you just did with the bishops, and then secondly, hey, I'm a little bit worse, white's got the space, but I'm solid. Even though I can't castle, what's the big deal? Knight g5 now from Fabi. And the trouble with facing a guy like this is what a theoretician he is, and what a master of opening surprises. You know he's going to bring something vicious here. This rook lift looks absolutely weird, of course, stepping into the x-ray, but it's technically okay. Black can get away with it. We now see the bishop pair dropped. Rook recaptures, of course, and the knight centralizes. Magnus gets these pawns rumbling. It's a standard structure here in this position. The explosive c4's on the board, clamping on these queenside pawns, but that's not where Fabi wants to play. His pawn majority lies over here. Magnus takes on Croissant, bellows it in his best French accent. Really beautiful pronunciation he's got these days. Pawn takes back. Magnus keeps rumbling over here, but Fabi now gets these ones going. But before you can say, let's all concentrate, show me your best concentration face, here's a good one from Anton Korobov. I do have to wonder, is he related to Hans Niemann? Striking resemblance there. It's almost like looking into the future of Hans himself. Hands up if you agree. We now see rook e2, and this is where the Berlin can be so difficult, especially if you're not an absolute expert. You know, Magnus plays everything. Rook a6 is best, and it's almost borderline an only move to sort of stay a bit worse, but not too much worse. And the idea is that takes can be played, bishop takes, a3, bishop back. I'm not even entirely clear why it's so important to provoke this. I mean, okay, there's going to be some b-file pressure. It was the way to go, apparently. Didn't start clicking super deep, because Magnus does this, and just like that, there's a big swing in the bar over here, because Fabi understands he should now start pushing his kingside pawns. And he starts with h4, not g4, because he doesn't want the knight to land there and blockade. So rook a6 now played, but it's a shot just a moment too late. What can white do now? Well, very well done if you understand these positions deep enough to just go pawn h5. Absolute best move. Give the pawn and rumble your own. Magnus doesn't yet take. He swings around to these passers that are soon going to be generated. Now we see g4. Knight's kicked. Pawn now defended. The pawn does at last drop here, but g5. This is Fabi's point. Yes, you've won this pawn, but it's cost you a lot of time. Your knight's getting kicked from pillar to post. Now we see g6 to defend the knight here. You know, it didn't actually have any squares, by the way. This is the problem with lacking space. You lack squares for your pieces to maneuver in, and now we see takes on g6, pawn recaptures, and the passed e-pawn is rumbling, boxing in the king here as well and creating mating threats or rook winning threats. It's awful. Magnus desperately tries bishop d6, but Fabi's advantage just jumped to plus 4.5. You know, what was preferred? Rook b6 apparently, but this was on the board. Now we see knight f6, and you can just see the woeful, sorry state that the black king is in. Takes was played, but Fabi doesn't even capture back. He goes for the kill absolutely correctly. There's so many tactics here, to be honest, and winning moves. We're just going to stick with what Fabi played. This was technically strongest, but he swings round immediately here, and after bishop takes on f4, he plays the only winning move, rook h7. I mean, king takes f4, also still good for white, but this is the absolute winning move, biggest on the evaluation, because you threaten mate, and there's only one way to stop it. You can't do it like this and stop the rook coming here, or then the pawn can push, and that's mate. Love when a knight is involved with a rook and a pawn. All this stuff has fancy names. I forget them all though. This was the game to block rook f7, which was threatening mate, because the knight's taking squares. The rook would take this and deliver the mate. But now you can check here. This is why the rook should have lifted to b6 earlier. This one drops off the board. We now see takes on b2. Captures, pawn takes. This looks super dangerous, but Fabi's got it worked out. He plays check. King goes up the board. Takes here. Magnus didn't take the pawn because he didn't want this to be a check. But regardless, after this, although it looks scary, Fabi has a winning continuation. This genuinely is the only winning move.
The only winning move.
It's the only move?
The only winning move.
It's the only move?
The only winning move.
It's the only...
It's knight e2. And if you advance the pawn, which you want to do, then you can take here, and you can't push through because the knight also covers this c1 queening square, so Magnus resigned here. The pawns are dropping, and Fabi is then simply an entire rook to the good. That is too much. So that was the first game of their mini match. Let's now jump to the second, because it just gets more thrilling, more exciting, more unexpected. You're about to see Magnus's king wind up on g5 with a million pieces still on the board. The whole opening is nuts.
Mushrooms.
Nuts.
Mushrooms.
Nuts. No clue what he's doing in this opening. Surely you win back your pawn now, right? Some kind of Catalan thing. But no, this. Fine, fair enough. a6. Now win back the pawn. No, still not taken. e6 from Fabi. He decides not to push b5, but fear not, it's coming. Magnus takes the big centre. Pawn b5. Fine. Maybe the queen drops back, and you play these positions where you're a pawn down, but you've got a big centre. Engine hates it, so apparently not. So the way to go, and what Magnus did, is sack the knight on b5. Pawn recaptures, given the brilliancy, because you give up an entire rook in the corner. However, what's black got for that? Well, a very annoying check and a very problematic queen stuck in the corner. Now what you should do here, best move, and there have been games from here, is bishop d2 simply. Then the queen can get kicked by the knight. And where's it actually going? There are not many squares. There's like one square that's actually safe. Or you could go to a7, but doesn't look right. So this would have been the game continuation. Bishop here, something like this. Black's got a draw if desired, or you could go for more, get something like this where you simply play an exchange down, but you've got initiative, you've got a trapped queen. So let's run back here, because check and bishop d2 was not played. Magnus plays the outlandish king to e2.
It's called the Bong Cloud.
I mean, bro just landed a bong cloud in the middle of one of the highest paying chess tournaments of the entire year. What on earth is this, right? The king's just going for a walk up the board. Now, if you get time to sort of bring the rook and maybe do some g3 business, but it's very slow, then okay, could be justified. But Fabi finds an absolute brilliant game changer. Pawn e5. And the subtleties of this is beautiful, because if you capture with the knight, which you want to do, surely, just looks so natural to do that. Well, then the knight takes back, fine, let's say bishop takes, keep the structure together here, but then you get fossilized, check, blocks, queen drops, undefended on a8. Beautiful lines. So this is the problem we're trying to take with the knight. Okay, what if you go with the bishop? Well, same kind of thing, right? Knight takes doesn't work, we've just shown. And if pawn takes, there's a new problem, a checkmate problem in one. Look at that. Now, this is why you don't bong cloud when there's still a million pieces on the board and the centre's under threat of getting ripped open. So in the game, we see pawn takes here, knight recaptures is absolutely brilliant, and we can now start to work out why. If knight takes, same problems, right? If bishop takes, same problems, right? You are dead. You are absolutely dead. So rook d1 from Magnus hits the queen, defends the d3 square, so the knight now jumps in, best move, threat, takes with check. So Magnus now plays the check here, bishop blocking, he picks up the pawn on c7. This is the best way of playing that Magnus has found here, but Fabi's just on fire, on form. This is a very instructive moment. If you're attacking the king, do not trade the queens. Yasser kind of hits home on the point in the studio. Queen a8 is the move. And how do you cover that e4 point? You just don't. There is no way. So you have to go for this. Swap off the queens. Fabi goes queen e7. Beautiful little step up the board, connecting the pieces. They're lovely little moves that make so much sense when you see them, but would you or I find them in the game? Probably not. Maybe if we were lucky one day. But to keep doing it consistently, move after move, and then Fabi leans forward and whispers, Zwischenzug, Magnus. Because he throws in this Zwischenzug, which means in between move, an intermezzo also known as, where you don't play the obvious or the needed necessary move first, you chuck in a little one, then you do this. Now it's forcing Magnus to stagger up the board with the king in order to regain his material. Now he is an exchange ahead after Fabi picks up this pawn. What's the pawn count? Level. So you've literally got a dark squared bishop in exchange for a light squared rook. Light squared rook makes no sense. They can live on either square. They're very versatile. They have been known to move house. But big problems are now on the horizon for white, because if the pawn drops, well, this is running. Obviously, the king is just in no man's land. Excuse me. No man's land. It's been quite a long day here. Covering chess recaps. It's too exciting. So Magnus covers this pawn here. But now, just an absolute killer. Fantastic move from Fabi. This is so cool. See if you can guess the most wild, crazy, ambitious tactical move in this position. Try not to die over here. The move he plays is g5 check. And if you take with the knight, then this is the point. You sneak him round the back and you hit him with the 1-2. King has to move, but it can't stay with the knight because this second bishop is laser beaming. You know, you go whatever, somewhere and takes. So king took. Wow. That is not where you want your king. All these pieces on the board, check, king here, takes, Magnus just getting kicked around now. Fabi the playground bully, not Magnus this time. Knight e4 check, king stepping here, and what's so beautiful about this position is the knight and the bishop are combining to form a mating net. Imagine this. So this, can you find checkmate in 4? I gave quite a hint. It's this stunning step back, rook a6. And how do you fight against that one? You can step up to cover the square, but bishop e3. Absolutely love this. I got no clue why, but Ding Lorenz coming to my head. He's got that immortal game where he sort of hunts a king over this side of the board with minor pieces. Incredible. This could be played to stave it off, but here we go. Now that would have been something, but missed unfortunately. Bishop f5 played, and now just when you thought you knew where this was headed, g4, you're about to see something absolutely otherworldly. Magnus is about to bring this back to a roughly level position. Watch this. It's nuts. He has to give the exchange here. The pieces are just kicking him around. So he does this. They're scrambling low on time. I mean, these guys have the most phenomenal battles. Loved their World Chess Championship in 2018. 12 draws, but every one you're on the edge of the seat. The knight rotates round to take here. So many good battles down the years. This is another. The pawn has collapsed. It's like -4 to black. But Magnus steps in and it's suddenly hard to run the pawns. You know, if you move the knight somewhere, well then there's takes here. And this one collapses. Then this one could too. The white king's well placed now. h4. You know, it's just a game. Craziness. So the knight can't really move so well. So king e7 was played. It's a great move by Fabi. h4. Knight a4 now is one of the better ways. To give a pawn but then try and swing the rook since you moved here. I don't know. It's crazy. We'll stick with what was played. Never play f6. Takes. Not takes, sorry. Knight e4. Takes was playable. Now we see takes. Pawn recaptures. Bishop f5. Rook e1, lining up with the king here. So we do see takes, not the best, but played and check. And look at that. Fabi's just now a half a pawn advantage. It really is back to an anything could happen game. Because even though these are so dangerous, it's difficult to rumble them. If you move the knight, you lose the c pawn. What if takes immediately, by the way? Sorry, it's check. Now takes. Whoops, now takes. Well, then the problem is this, and the pawn runs. So you can't actually take. So what should you do? Rook e1 is actually best, and just saying, hey, how are you going to make progress with those black pieces? It's not easy. But Magnus plays this, as you just saw. I gave it away a little bit. We see the butt flap dropping out of Sir Stock Squiddington, because now knight d1 check. And you found a way to move the knight, run the pawns. If king takes not played, I thought b2, but okay, check is actually stronger first. Same kind of thing that I was just showing, b2, and here, and what, knight f2 check. Okay, didn't have this line prepared, but we worked it out on the fly. So check was played, king b4 is best, but now rook c2. Supporting this pawn, preparing to run the b pawn. Magnus desperately tries rook e1, best move. You could even run this, not played, but this wins. Pawn's going through, right? You just can't stop it all. But not played. Fabi goes knight b2. King a3 keeps Magnus in the game, just barely. But he blunders now with bishop h3. Finally cracks under the immense pressure. It was awful from the bad opening after the old bomb cloud. This ends the game with Fabi going to Forktown. Population Magnus Carlsen. He resigns here. It's game over. You have to step this way. Don't step here. Get mated. Let's say here. And of course this is lost. Overwhelming material advantage. Chess history has just been made. Fabiano Caruana beats Magnus Carlsen in back-to-back over-the-board chess games. That has never happened. Other way around? Sure. Magnus spanks not Hikaru, Fabi from time to time. Hikaru too, right? You know, historic dominations. But Fabi doing this to Magnus 2 in a row. And in rapid as well, the shorter time control. Wow. Fair to Magnus, he's not fully himself, not fully in shape, I wouldn't say. He is a father now, of course, young child at home, no doubt that doesn't help. But okay, he's still Magnus Carlsen, still take nothing away from Fabi. Hope you enjoyed, and have a look at the video on the screen for an absolutely mesmerising battle between Gukesh and Fabi yesterday. Blew my mind how good that chess was. Thanks for watching and see you soon. Cheers.